At 2:30 in the morning on February 28, 2026, Donald Trump posted an 8-minute video on Truth Social. He did not look like a man who had just woken up. He looked like a man who had been awake all night, watching something unfold that he had approved weeks ago. He spoke calmly. He said the United States was taking action to eliminate imminent threats from the Iranian regime. He told the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to lay down their weapons or face, in his words, certain death. By the time most Americans finished reading the notification on their phones and clicked the video, the missiles had already been in the air for hours. What happened on the morning of February 28, 2026 was not a warning. It was not a limited strike. It was the largest coordinated military operation the United States had launched in the Middle East since the invasion of Iraq, and it was designed from the very beginning to do one thing above everything else: end the regime that had controlled Iran for nearly 5 decades in a single morning. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. To understand what happened that morning, you have to understand what the weeks before it looked like. Iran and the United States had actually been talking. Indirect negotiations mediated through Oman had been underway for weeks. A second round of talks had been scheduled. Just 24 hours before the strikes began, Oman's foreign minister publicly announced that a breakthrough was close, that Iran had agreed in principle to never stockpile enriched uranium. Diplomats on both sides were preparing for the next conversation. Iran genuinely believed a deal was possible. That belief is part of what made the next morning so devastating. Because while those talks were happening, two of the most powerful naval forces on Earth were quietly repositioning. The Abraham Lincoln moved into the Arabian Sea, south and east of Iran. The Gerald Ford, the largest warship ever built, took up position in the eastern Mediterranean. The military buildup was visible enough that analysts around the world were writing about it. But Iran, watching the diplomatic channels stay open, read the buildup as pressure rather than preparation. It was preparation. The first thing that happened on the morning of February 28th was not an explosion. It was silence. Before a single visible weapon was fired, American electronic warfare systems operating from aircraft, ships, and satellites began their work. Iranian radar networks, the eyes that would have seen everything coming, started receiving false information. Operators staring at their screens saw a version of reality that did not exist. Hundreds of fake aircraft signatures flooded their displays simultaneously, a ghost fleet of targets that were not there, screaming toward the capital from every direction at once. Every radar operator, every air defense commander in Iran that morning was making decisions based on a picture that had been painted for them by American software running thousands of kilometers away. By the time the real weapons arrived, there was no coherent defense left to activate. Then the Tomahawk cruise missiles left their launch cells, dozens of them from destroyers positioned across the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea, flying low, hugging the earth, threading between mountains and valleys, arriving at radar installations and air defense command centers across Iran within the same 60-second window. Not one after another, all of them simultaneously. The air defense headquarters in Tehran went dark. The radar sites protecting Isfahan went silent. The command bunkers that would have coordinated any response stopped responding. In military planning, this is called suppression of enemy air defenses. What happened to Iran that morning was not suppression, it was erasure. With the door kicked open, the stealth aircraft came through it. American and Israeli F-35s, flying at altitudes and speeds that surviving Iranian radars could not track, moved toward their targets. Isfahan, Iran's nuclear and drone manufacturing crown jewel, the most heavily defended site in the country, lit up the night sky. Karaj, the industrial hub where so much of Iran's aerospace capability was built, was hit simultaneously. Targets in Tehran itself, in the carefully guarded districts where Iran's senior leadership had their offices and compounds, were struck with a precision that made clear this had been planned not for weeks, but for months. The Israelis called their part of the operation Roar of the Lion. Every wave was calculated. Every impact was timed. The goal was not to damage the regime, The goal was to remove it entirely before it could react. And at the center of everything was one address. The compound near University Street in Tehran's Jamhuri district is not a place most people outside of Iran would recognize by name. But inside the Iranian government, everyone knows what it is. It is where Ayatollah Ali Khamenei worked, where he received officials, where he issued guidance, where the decisions that shaped the entire country flowed from for more than 3 decades. Israeli missiles hit that compound in the first wave. The IDF stated publicly and directly that Khamenei had been killed. Iranian state media said he had not been in his offices when the missiles arrived. For hours, the world held its breath, waiting for a photograph, a statement, a proof of life that never came with any clarity. Then came the confirmation that reshaped everything. Khamenei was dead. Iran still had weapons. A regime being destroyed does not stop fighting in the moment its leader falls. Operation Truthful Promise 4, Iran's retaliatory strike, came within hours. A massive wave of ballistic missiles and drones targeted American bases across the region. The Way base at Al Dhafra was hit, leaving casualties from shrapnel. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was directly targeted. Sirens went off across Israel. Interceptions lit up the skies over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Kuwait locked down its airspace. The chaos was real, and the danger was real. But here is what that retaliation revealed. Iran was firing back without its command structure, without its supreme leader, without the network of decision makers that had been systematically targeted in the opening hours of the operation. The missiles and drones that flew toward American bases that morning were not a coordinated strategic response. They were the last reflex of a system whose brain had just been removed. There is a word for what the United States and Israel executed on February 28, 2026. The word is decapitation. Not in the crude physical sense alone, but in the operational sense. A government is not just a person. It is a network of people who coordinate, communicate, authorize, and respond. The operation that morning was designed to sever those connections simultaneously, to make it impossible for any surviving element of the Iranian government to reach any other surviving element fast enough to mount a coherent defense. The electronic warfare came first to blind. The cruise missiles came second to silence. The stealth aircraft came third to destroy. And threading through all of it, synchronized to the second, Israeli jets flew more than 1,000 miles across the airspace of neighboring countries, crossing corridors that had been quietly cleared in the preceding days, arriving over Iranian targets at the exact moment the American weapons were impacting, time on target. The principle is simple. If your enemy has any time between the first impact and the second, they can react, they can move, they can evacuate, they can fire back with some coherence. The way you remove that time is by ensuring there is no gap. Every missile, every bomb, every electronic pulse arrives within the same window. Iran's leadership had no gap. No moment where the first impact served as a warning for what came next. By the time anyone in the Iranian chain of command understood what was happening across all their cities simultaneously, it had already happened. The Middle East that existed on the morning of February 27, 2026, does not exist anymore. The Iran that launched drones at Israel, that funded proxy forces across the region, that held the Strait of Hormuz as a perpetual threat over the global economy, operated under a government and a supreme leader that were removed in 4 hours. What comes next? Who fills the vacuum? How the region reorganizes itself around an Iran without the regime that defined it for 47 years? Those questions do not have answers yet. What does have an answer is the military question that everyone in the region had been asking for 2 decades. Could it actually be done? On February 28, 2026, the answer came. It already was.